So, finding that full-time teaching position can be incredibly difficult. Most of the time, teachers are spending years and years on the supply list or that long-term occasionalist before finding that all-coveted full-time position. So in this video, I want to take you through the 5 ways that I prepare for teacher job applications and interviews, and trust me, they are incredibly effective. So with that said, let's get into the video. So the first way to prepare for your teacher job application is to prepare your portfolio. Now that's right, you heard me there. We're starting with your portfolio, not your resume. Because I think that a portfolio is arguably the #1 most important part of your job application, not your resume or your cover letter. However, it's not for the reason that you might think. In fact, most interviewers won't actually even look at your portfolio, and this is because they're often interviewing multiple applicants for the same position in a very short turnaround time. They just don't have the time. But that doesn't mean that your portfolio is not important, because trust me, it is. In fact, in the way that I prepare for interviews and in the way that I suggest you prepare for interviews, the whole interview process occurs because of your portfolio. In short, the portfolio is the place where you highlight every single thing about yourself. You're going to highlight your teaching philosophy. You're going to highlight how you address issues of equity in the classroom, such as racism, Indigenous education, and accommodating special needs, etc. You're also going to talk about how you integrate technology into your classroom and into your teaching, and most importantly, how you assess your students. Sorry, I should say there how you equitably assess your students. There are a whole lot of things that you're going to want to include in your teaching portfolio. However, I'm not going to get into that today, as that's going to be a topic for an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. But at the heart of it, your portfolio serves as a basis for the entire application process and the entire interview process. And you're going to understand starting with the next thing you need to do. So, the second thing you're going to want to do is to prepare your resume. And your resume is one of the 3 most important parts of your application, and it's going to be one of the 3 things that the interviewer and hiring agents see before interviewing you. So it's very important to do well on this. And basically, you're going to want to do 3 things here, the last of which is the most important and most effective way to nailing that job application and getting the interview. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to talk about your various teaching experiences and your practicum experiences. You're going to want to touch on what grades and subjects you've taught, what your classifications are, so are you able to teach primary, junior, intermediate, senior, so on and so forth. You're also going to want to touch on what extracurriculars and initiatives you've gotten involved with at the school. And then you're also going to want to touch on how you connected with students. Now the second thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look up board initiatives and the director's action plan for the school board that you're going to be applying to. Now this is vital because this is how you're going to frame the rest of your resume and your application. Here you're going to write about these topics in your summary of qualifications. And you're going to make sure that they're touched on throughout the rest of your resume. And it's also vital here that you use the all-important keywords. You're going to want to be discussing technology, modern learning, equity, inclusivity, etc. But remember, you always want to bring it back to what the board action plan is. And this is just going to show the school board that you're applying to that you've researched them, that you know what they're interested in, and you're on board for that. And lastly, and most importantly, what you're going to want to do when building your resume, you're going to want to go back into that portfolio that we just talked about, and you're going to want to pull all the artifacts and all of the pieces that you've worked on that showcase how you've met those board initiatives. And you're going to want to put them in a Google Drive. Then you're going to be able to go into your resume, and you're going to be able to link those specific artifacts and pieces of your portfolio that showcase how you met the board's action plan and the board initiatives. For example, how are you addressing equity and racism in the classroom? How are you addressing the use of technology or modern learning? These are all things that should be discussed in your portfolio anyways. So all you're doing here is you're giving it a very quick link into your resume, so that way your interviewer doesn't need to look through all the fluff. They can look at the specific artifacts that you want them to see. And that is super, super powerful. You're basically forcing the interviewer to look at your portfolio and showcase how you have met their board initiatives and why you're the perfect person for this job. And another thing that's important to note here, now it is a little bit minor, but it's something that the school boards really, really look for, is by linking in your portfolio into your resume and linking all these different resources, what you're doing is you're showing the boards that you are technically and digitally literate. Now that is something super, super important, especially as we start to get into modern learning and using more technology. So it gives you a step up on the rest of the competition. And now we're going to jump over into our third piece of preparing for an application or preparing for an interview, and that is writing your cover letter. And there's two important steps to writing a good cover letter. Now, the first piece is going to be looking through the board action plan and board initiatives, and also to be looking through that job posting, seeing what they're looking for in teachers, and those are giving you the highlighted points that you're just going to want to touch on in your cover letter. And now for a couple of those points, what you're going to want to do, similar to the resume, you're going to want to go into that Google Drive, and you're going to want to link specific artifacts that showcase how you meet those board initiatives. Again, it's very similar, and you're only going to want to do it for 1 or 2 points, but you're going to want to get the point across that, like, this is what you're looking for, and this is how I meet those requirements. Hire me. That's what you're telling the interviewer by doing this. And that leads me to now the fourth way to prepare for your job interviews and your job applications. And that is preparing for the questions you're going to be asked. And surprisingly, this is actually harder than you might think. I just went through a couple of interviews this past week, and I was surprised. Even though I prepared for questions and answers, there are so many permutations, there's so many ways that you can ask the same question. So you can't quite give a cookie cutter response. However, with that said, there's also 6 or so broad categories that the questions fall under. And what I'm going to be doing over the upcoming months, and you're probably going to see this happen in the next 2 or 3 months, so that way, by the time April, May rolls around when most of us are going to be applying to job applications, you're going to be able to go through a bunch of my interview strategies. I'm going to be breaking down the different categories that the questions fall under. I'm going to give you some specific interview scenarios that you might be asked. I'm going to give you my answers to them and how I would approach those answers. I'm also going to talk about things that are important to describe in your responses. So I'm not going to do that in this video because otherwise this video would probably be over 3 hours long. But look forward and stay tuned for that content because it's going to be super important and super helpful for landing you that job. And actually that brings me to my very last point. And that is the last minute thing that you're going to want to do. And that is prepare your clothes for the interview. Make sure that you have some nice clothes laid out the night before. Make sure they're ironed if you need to iron them. And this might seem a little bit obvious because, you need to be dressed nice going into an interview, but really the whole idea is this is the first time your interviewer is seeing you. And you want to make sure that you leave a lasting good impression that they're going to be able to pass on to the HR department saying, hire this person. They look professional, they have a sunny attitude, and they're just someone that we want working for us. And now this is a little bit of a bonus tip for all of you who are still watching now. And what that is the first thing you're going to do, and this is something you're going to want to practice, the first thing you're going to do when entering that interview, you're going to paste that big smile on your face, and you're going to tell the interviewer, thank you so much for having me here today and interviewing for this opportunity with your school board. So practice that little introduction piece. Trust me, it goes a long way and just makes the interviewer connect with you a little bit more. So with that said, everyone, these are my 5 most important must-do things to prepare for your teacher job interviews and your teacher job applications. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like and subscribe, and also comment down below if you have any interview experience to date. It would go a long way helping out the community, and I appreciate that. But with that said, stay happy, safe, and healthy, and I'll see you all around. Bye, everyone.